Our beloved Damian Lillard has been eliminated in the first round, and no, he's not still in Portland.
Some things stay the same.
We sent him to Milwaukee, and he still got to taste that first-round loss.
I was actually, of all the guys that could have played, I was surprised that he was the one back and not Giannis. Felt like there was momentum for Giannis, maybe. He was running. That was trending. The Achilles injury, it's always scary.
I think they don't want to risk one versus saying, well, if you're a healthier version, it's okay.
Even though we mortgaged our future for you, if you pop your Achilles, you miss all of next season.
Yeah, you do.
To mortgage it for Game 6 against Indiana.
The Pacers beat him in 5. 6. Thank you.
Yeah.
6. And it was the T.J. McConnell game.
As we all predicted.
His wife, Val, showed up. When asked why he was so good, Tyrese Halliburton said, well, his wife, Val, was there. And I was like, well, that's a weird thing to say.
Val's in the crowd, man. TJ's going off.
T.J. McConnell, I once told Sprague at an NCAA tournament
That's right.
game.
We should not be surprised at his brilliance after sitting courtside watching that performance.
Well, I am surprised he's this good.
I'm surprised he's still in the league.
Yeah,
I'm like, how long ago did we go to that NCAA tournament?
That was a long time ago.
But T.J. McConnell's carved out a nice little career for himself. I like and appreciate T.J. McConnell, but the hair and the screaming kind of make me hate him.
That's fair. That's a pretty accurate description.
Like the whole LeBron scream, but your TJ McConnell doesn't play with me at all times unless you're a Blazer.
Yeah, I know who you are.
And so I'm like, oh, God, you.
7 of 9 from the floor last night. Yeah. Hits a couple of big threes.
He was
Crowd's
big,
going
though.
crazy.
He was big for him.
He was awesome. That game was the dud that I think a lot of people were worried it was going to be. They jumped all over him right out of the gate. There were a couple of times where Milwaukee would cut it to 9 or 10, and you're kind of like, all right, maybe there's something here. And every time that would happen, Indiana would hit a 3, get a stop, get a dunk, and then all of a sudden it leads back to 15. Milwaukee just couldn't cut into it.
Dame was asked in the postgame, something to the effect of, hey, your first year in Milwaukee, and this is what Dame had to say.
It was a roller coaster of a year, but I think for me personally, it was a year of growth more than anything. My first time being a part of a different organization than the Trailblazers, after 11 years. Picking up my life and, being away from my family and away from my kids, being traded so late into the summer, playing for multiple coaches, trying to find myself within a new dynamic, a new team, a new organization, playing with another superstar player, another great player in K-Mid. So just trying to find my space within that with everything else happening all at the same time. I think it was a lot for me to fight through, but I take a lot of pride in standing tall, when things don't go as planned or go how I would like them to go. And I always want to look back and be able to tell myself that as a man, when I didn't play well, when things didn't go how I might have expected it to go, when I was going through some things, whether people knew about it or not, I stood tall in it. I never made an excuse or nothing like that.
So Dame's first year in Milwaukee, just a bizarre one, traded very late in the process because his agent pissed Joe Cronin off, and Joe Cronin said, I'm not telling you where you want to go. Got a deal with Milwaukee, so sent him to what seems like a good spot on paper because it's Giannis, and, I'd been told that Dame wanted to play with Giannis more than anybody else in the league. Then they hired they first hired the coach, and then they got the trade, and so Dame gets over there late, and that coach fires Dame's former head coach in Portland because, ego. And then they started record-wise not bad, but they had some really bad losses, and it built. And then, boom, they fire that guy, and they hire his consultant, and then they don't become better with that guy. And just a really weird year where, much like Embiid, there's a lot of noise about Dame. We love Dame, big Dame fans. But because Dame didn't succeed fully the way he wanted to in Portland for so many years, and we know why they didn't, but if you're looking at it outside of Portland, it for some people became oh yeah, that guy just gets a pass every year. Oh yeah, it's somebody else's fault. Mm-hmm. And some of that noise is going to pick up and has been picking up this year. A weird year one in Milwaukee comes to an end in the first round against the Indiana Pacers.
Very weird year one, and not to mention you point to all the on the court weird stuff. You also have to acknowledge everything that he was going through off the court as well, which was not easy and not pretty. And there were all these different quotes about how he's bored there, he's depressed there.
He kind of did come out and say he adjusted. He was fine in Milwaukee. That
Yes.
some of that stuff.
It was just being separated from his family and
Yeah.
going through a divorce. Like, that's why he was feeling the way that he was feeling. I don't think he minds playing in a cold city or a smaller city. He lived in Portland. He loved Portland.
Lived in Utah, for God's
right.
sakes.
So he's like, it's not a city thing. I think it was just about what he was going through. It's a unique ending to their year. And it's funny how you're going to get takes all over the map on this. You got to pivot immediately. He's old. Look at the contract. Can you actually win with that? Is this going to work out long term for Milwaukee? Look what they gave up to go get him. When I think the elephant in the room, and not that I'm even concerned long term about this, but there's one lingering issue that has existed now in back-to-back postseasons for Milwaukee that we're not talking about that much, and that is the fact of who missed games in their first-round exit last year? Giannis.
Mm-hmm.
That was the main reason why I think they lost that series. He missed 3 games of that series. Who didn't play a second in the playoffs this year?
Giannis.
Yeah. How many teams in the NBA, like, not to get back into a debate about Jamal Murray and is he overrated, if you take Jokic out, switch the health of Jokic and Giannis, and in Denver's playing LA, do they win that series
No,
without Jokic?
they
Not
lose.
a chance in hell.
They lose.
And what's the conversation about Jamal Murray? What's the conversation about Denver? What do you do here? I know it's different because they just won a title last year. I just there's not many teams in the league that can overcome not having their best player on the floor. Dame's a really good player. He was not brought there to be their best player. That is supposed to be honest. So I know a lot of this seems like excuse making for Damian Lillard. It was not a perfect year for him by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah.
I'm not of the mindset that he's at the precipice of the cliff. Now, is that cliff 1 year away, 2 years away, 3 years away? Nobody knows. I don't think he's there yet.
Milwaukee has to guess, and they have to try to be right.
They do, and it's not going to be easy because they gave up a lot of assets to build this, but if your star is not going to be healthy in back-to-back playoffs, you're not going to do anything, and that's the reality for every NBA team.
Well, they haven't been healthy since they won the title.
No, not at all.
Giannis, Middleton, Dame, Giannis, they've just had really awful luck. I follow a guy in Milwaukee, Bart Winkler, and he does his own thing now. I think he's on CBS Sports Radio now, but he says this, and I kind of think some of it's true. Sometimes it feels like the way they cover Milwaukee nationally is a little bit carrying the hatred that Giannis decided to stay in Milwaukee instead of going Chicago or New York or LA or wherever the hell they wanted to.
Being a bigger market.
There's a little bit to it of look at, they failed again. They failures, bunch of failures.
Yeah.
And I kind of agree with it. They just haven't been healthy. It's been really awful luck. Middleton was caught crying on the bench last night. And I felt for him because he was pretty good at the end of this playoff.
He was.
And he wasn't healthy. And it was tough for him this year. He's got another year before he has a player option he can pick up. I don't know what you do with that. Brook was okay for them, but I thought largely kind of looked pretty old this year at different points. Didn't really gel with Dame how I thought he would.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what they do. We'll get to one of the role guys on their team too because, man, what a jackass. It feels like Milwaukee's got quite a bit of stuff to do. Their depth was terrible this year. Grayson Allen is not like some piece I think you win a title or changes your title odds, but he had a really great year for Phoenix before he got hurt. Your role guys weren't good. You relied on an old Pat Bev podcaster. Your coaching situation sucked. Injuries play a big part of this. Milwaukee, if they still think it's Dame and Giannis, and I think that they will think that because of what they traded, they feel like they have a lot of moves to make or need to make, and then they have to hope that Dame doesn't age the way that he kind of was this year, where it was good, looked a little banged up, but they never talked about it, and then injured.
Mm-hmm.
That you need Dame to get through this thing, and so I don't think seeding's that important, but they feel like they've got a lot of roster stuff to shake up in Milwaukee.
It's funny how the thing we lamented at the end of this Blazer season was not getting an accurate picture of where you're at with your young guys because of the health issues that you went through this year of where's Shaden at? Nobody knows. He played 20 games basically this year. I would use the same analogy for Milwaukee. Like, I don't disagree with anything you're saying. They got a lot of hard questions they got to answer roster-wise, and Boston's not going anywhere in the short term or long term.
Neither is New York.
And neither is New York.
Philly's probably going nowhere with Maxey.
Right?
Like, you have to look at every team in the landscape of the East.
No doubt. But how different? If Giannis is healthy, I think they beat Indiana in the first round. If Giannis is healthy, I think they have a legitimate shot, and I would probably pick them to beat New York in the second round.
Okay.
And if they go to a conference finals and let's say they lose to Boston in 6 games, how different is the narrative as opposed to not having your star and losing?
But your narrative's hypothetical.
The
real
totally.
narrative is that they failed this year.
Sure.
They were one of the biggest disappointments in the NBA. Dame did not have a great year, and obviously there's some stuff to that.
Yeah.
But that's the reality. They were hurt. They've been hurt every year. That's the reality. They can't live in the hypothetical of, well, if we're not hurt next year, do we make the conference finals? You're not good enough to beat Boston. I don't know for certain if you beat New York. Maybe I take it because I'm rooting for Dame. They have to evaluate this with reality, not hypotheticals.
Sure. And if Giannis is going to get hurt every playoffs, you're not going to win.
That's certainly true, yes.
There's not a team in the NBA that can win at this level without their number one guy.
But, Dirt, even when Giannis played, they were clunky. They have no depth.
I'm not disagreeing with any of that.
Middleton was banged up for most of the – they're old.
Yeah.
They're old and they're slow. You need to combat that with youth, athleticism. I'm fascinated to see how they build this because Dame's right. Comes back next year, everything will feel more comfortable. I'm sure he'll play with Giannis this offseason at some point. He'll understand what Milwaukee's landscape is, how the organization's structured.
Maybe hire a competent head coach. That would help a little bit too.
Maybe you say, sorry, Budenholzer, come back. Terry, come back.
Terry,
offense.
Yeah.
I don't know what they do, but they got a lot of things to try to figure out, and that did not go well for them. They were the biggest disappointment in the NBA this year. And they can't live in hypotheticals. They got to live in the reality. And the reality is they've got a jackass on that team